Hi, did you know that your words and your thoughts are spiritual and they impact every outcome that you have in life? I'm Dr. Tara T Stallings, and I'm here today to talk with you about how natural actions impact spiritual outcomes and vice versa. So let's get into it today. Let's get into it today. If you haven't already, make sure you share and like and share, and subscribe to my stations and my channels. Look, YouTube and Facebook and TikTok and all those great ones. So let's get into it today. Your thoughts and your words are spiritual. And I guess you wonder, what do you mean when I say that? Have you ever saw a thought? Have you ever saw a word that comes, a thought that pops in your head? Or a word that comes out of your mouth? You haven't. You cannot see spiritual things. So, because you cannot see your words or your thoughts, they are spiritual. According to Proverbs, life and death is in the power of your tongue. Your words are life. They are spirit and they are life. They produce life and they produce death. And a lot of times, because we don't understand um, the words or understand the knowledge that we're given, we don't know how to apply it to our life and how it can be damaging to our lives until we get in a situation and we're like, what's going on? So today I want to talk to you how natural actions influence spiritual outcomes and vice versa. So let's get into it today. So again, your thoughts and your words, they're spiritual because you cannot see it. And I shared with you before, you are a spirit, you have a soul, you live in a body. Everybody does. If you're here legally, unless you are disembodied spirit living in somebody else's body, you here illegally. You got to still be here in you have to be legal here, you have to have a body, period. That's it. But your thoughts, your words create things spiritually, because life and death is in the power of your thought life and your word life. Because what you think, you eventually say, or you behave. You think what the thoughts that come in your head, you say it, but then you start acting out what you think and what you behave, because it becomes your truth. It becomes a belief system for you. So it's very important for everyone, as they try to navigate through life, to be mindful of the thoughts that they let sit. Listen to my words carefully, that come through, that they let sit and become a part of their thought system and mindset, that eventually become words and beliefs and actions. Now, how do we get thoughts? Can we control our thoughts? Yes and no. You cannot control a thought that comes to you. Because one thing I realized in life, two things you cannot do. You cannot unsee something, and you cannot unhear it. I'm going to say that again. You cannot unsee something that you saw, and you cannot unhear something that you heard. So it's always in the computer of our mind. It's going to always be there, waiting to come up. Whether it's television, whether it's something that your parents said, that the teacher said, that you read, that you saw, that anything that you saw, that you read, you cannot erase it from your being. So when thoughts show up, you have to decide, is that a thought that's going to align with who I am as a person, the things that I want to achieve in life, my belief systems, and what I really want. And I use that word really want because a lot of times your belief system has been tainted by past experiences, your circumstances, your environment, things that you listen to constantly on television, that you listen to, that you listen and watch on television, that you read, the people that you hang around, the culture, all those things influence you as a person. I remember growing up, and my mom used to say this, and as kids, you're like, oh, birds of a feather flock together. Have y'all heard that saying, birds of the feather flock together? Meaning, if you associate yourself with certain social groups, mindsets, if you listen to certain types of music consistently, these things are consistently, they transform how you think. They transform your mindset, which changes how you speak and how you behave. And your outcomes are influenced by those things. And vice versa, because it's almost like a bamboo effect. Okay, let me tell you what do I mean when I say that? You can, because I like to give you practical examples of what I mean when I said your thoughts and your words impact your world. That's basically what it is. It impacts your outcome. If you think constantly, and I'm going to use some negative things, but I'm going to use some positive examples also. If you think constantly that you are worthless, that you're not worthy, that you're incompetent, that you're not smart, everything that you do in your life is going to reflect those thoughts that you think about yourself. No matter how smart you are in actuality, but your decisions, your life is going to be based on those thoughts. Your life is going to reflect those thoughts. Let me give you a better example that I love to use. And this is a true example. Person that I used to associate with, every time and these are thoughts that becomes words. Listen to me now. They always make the statement, every time I go out to dinner, they always mess my order up. Every restaurant I ever go to, they always mess my order up. Guess what happens every time they went to a restaurant? They always messed his order up because his mindset, the thoughts were in his head, every time I go to a restaurant, they always mess my order up. So his expectation was they're going to mess my order up. And he created that natural environment because your words create your world, whether you realize it or not. What you think, you become. What you think you're going to have, you're going to have. So every time he went to a restaurant, guess what happened? His order was always messed up, whether it was something major or something minor, because in his mind, he created that. It's going to be messed up. So guess what? What the world calls, you put that energy out, because words are spirit, spirits are energy. So he already put that in the atmosphere, so he created it. So as he created that, that's what he always got. So if he would have had the mindset, wherever I go, they always get my order right. Guess what would have happened? Everywhere he went, every time he went to the restaurant, his order would be right. And if it wasn't right, it would have been something minor, and it still would have been right. So I use that example for you so that you could understand you're more powerful than you think, and you can control your outcomes, because naturally, and I want you to see how the natural impacts the spiritual and the spiritual impacts the natural. The natural impact, your natural actions impact spiritual outcomes, just like spiritual things impact natural outcomes. And if we don't understand this, you keep repeating the same unwanted cycles. Now, I shared this a while ago on one of my podcasts or one of my shows about anxiety and depression. Well, guess what? We have been taught that anxiety and depression is a cause. It is not a cause, it's an effect. It's an effect of some negative thinking. What caused the negative thinking? You have to get to the root of the problem. We, most of the time, even as clinicians, as therapists, as counselors, we are taught to look at the fruit of the problem. What is the root of the problem? And even with doctors, physicians, they look at the fruit, which is the symptoms that you have. What caused it? And we want to treat those things that cause the fruition of the fruit instead of going to the root. And let's deal with the root of the issue so we don't have that, we don't produce the fruit of it anymore. We don't produce the fruit of it anymore. So, in order to understand how natural and spiritual things, natural actions impact spiritual outcomes, and vice versa, you have to understand how the world works around you. And that's, I see so often why so many people stay in this conundrum, this cycle of defeat, of depression, of anxiety, of bad health, of error teaching, of frustration, of defeat, because they have not been taught properly how you are created and how the world works, how the system of this world works. We are a three-dimensional being. We live in a three-dimensional world: body, soul, and spirit. Most people often operate it from the one dimension when it's the world, what they can see. Ooh, excuse me. Oh. What they can see. And what you can see is usually a product of something that you said years ago, some thoughts that you have, because your thoughts create also. Some thoughts that you've had from years and years and years, and then 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you see the fruit of it. I share this personal person that I know. When they were younger, they would always say, and this person is older now, I don't need anybody. Listen to the words. I don't need anybody. I can take care of myself. I don't need anybody to do anything for me. I don't need ninjas to do anything for me. This is the mindset. So guess what? They get older and they need people, but because they have spoke that in the atmosphere, those spiritual words, their natural outcomes is nobody wants to be bothered with them. Nobody wants to come and help because he set up from a spiritual place, speaking words, created a natural outcome that, hey, because you spoke this is the outcomes that you're getting. And now they're in a place of sometimes depression or loneliness because they don't understand. When nobody's coming around and nobody's doing this and nobody's doing that, well, you set it up that way. You spoke it, so now you have to try to reverse it. And if you don't understand that, you keep recreating these outcomes. I remember I heard, and I shared this because these are examples of how natural actions produce spiritual outcomes and vice versa. Cindy Trim shared a story on one of her podcasts or one of her books about when she was 18, she would always say, by the time I'm 40 years old, I'm going to be dead. Now, when you're 18 years old, you think 40 is old, which is really not, because it's so far off, but it comes really fast. So she kept speaking those words. Now, this is her account. She said by the time she turned 38, her body started to shut down. And she went to so many different doctors, and they could not tell her what was going on with her body. Her body just started breaking down because your words are spirit and they are life and they create. And for so many years, the thoughts and the words kept coming out. By the time I get 40, I'm gonna be dead. I'm gonna die. So guess what? The words that she used start creating that world. So her body started to shut down. She said she prayed, and guess what? Holy Spirit revealed to her, well, you've been speaking this for so many years that by the time you turn 40, you're going to die. So the laws of the world are the laws of the world, no matter what God you believe, because the system, the principles work the same, and the laws of the land, and we all are the same. They work the way that they work. So she repented, she denounced it, and she started speaking life into her body. Now she's in her 60s, and she's alive. It reversed it. So, and I share this story with you because so many people are defeated in life because they don't understand that your words are powerful and they create outcomes that are spiritual, because no one can see how your words are creating things, but you can see the natural outcomes of them. Now I got story on top of story on top of story. So how do you prevent these things? You have to be careful of what you watch and what you see, what you listen to, people that you hang around. Because and just examples, if you watch scary movies all the time, you're going to open up the door, even though it's a movie. Even though it's a movie, it's going to promote violence and horror and fear into you. So you're going to open up a spiritual doorway for fear. And everywhere you go, you're going to be scared. You're going to be paranoid. You're going to be, ooh, what if this happens? Ooh, what if that happens? And I use my example. I watched the movie Jaws. I don't know how many of y'all remember Jaws from a long time ago. The movie Jaws, the shark that was eating people in the ocean. I don't go in the ocean today because I saw that movie and I remember that shark was eating people. I do not go in the ocean. Now, I know I'm not going to be that far in the ocean, and I understand that was a movie. But in my psyche, I don't go in the ocean because I can see a shark coming out to eat me. I don't even get in a pool when there's too many things. If it's things in the pool and things are touching me, I don't, because I have that, I can see it. So I have that mindset. So I'm very careful of that. Now people say, oh, that's crazy. No, this is how things are created, because I can see it. And then my body, the natural, will start responding to it because I can start feeling things touching me that are not touching me. I remember back in the 80s, and this is how natural actions have spiritual outcomes and vice versa. When AIDS, and I use this example, when AIDS was, they were going around doing AIDS testing. I was a little promiscuous. I had been a little promiscuous and had some unprotected sex or whatever when I was younger. And the health department, they had these free AIDS tests. This is like in the 90s, the mid 90s. And they gave you a little pamphlet with the symptoms of HIV and AIDS. Well, I took the AIDS test and I read the pamphlet. When I tell you, back then it took, I think, 2 or 3 weeks to get the test back. I had every symptom in that book. I started getting little lesions on me. I had every symptom in that pamphlet because I started thinking, I read it, I saw it, and I started thinking about, okay, I had unprotected sex, and my mind start creating in my body the natural, those symptoms that I read on that pamphlet. I was not HIV positive, and still not HIV positive, but because my thoughts were creating these things that happen. And these things can truly happen to a person. So if it can happen in a negative, it happens in the positive also. So vice versa. I use the scary movie. When you look at pornography, when you look at violent movies, it causes that spirit that's attached to it to start creating natural outcomes. If you're looking at people that's want to New Jack City, you want to be a dope dealer, guess what? You're going to start producing what you see. So you have to be mindful of the words, the thoughts, the people that you're around, because it just consistently, let me say that now, consistently, because if you don't, what happens is it produces those outcomes. And then you get in a place, you're like, well, why am I here? How did I get here? Well, you got there over time because your words are spirit and they're life, and they produce natural outcomes. It's like opening up a doorway. So if you can imagine a door, watching something one time may not, sometimes it will open the door up. And every time you watch it, it just opens it a little bit further, a little bit further, and a little bit further, and a little bit further, and a little bit further, until it has full access to come in and out. And what happens is, a lot of times it'll have full access to you, and it'll sit dormant for years until the opportune time to say, hey, let me come out and start tormenting. And you've been great all your life, and one incident happens, and everything, the spirit of fear, you're afraid, you have a phobia. These are natural actions. You have a phobia. You are a hypochondriac. You are have low self-esteem, you worry, you start having anxiety, you have depression, you start thinking thoughts that are not true about yourself, you start having physical symptoms because there's a doorway that's open, and it causes a natural outcome or a spiritual outcome. Because remember, we're mind, body, and spirit. We're spirit. We are spirit. We have a body. We live. We are spirit. We have a soul, and we live in a body. And all these things impact our mental health, our emotional health, our spiritual life, and those around us. So it's important that we learn the diversity of who we are and how everything, I talked this last year and I've talked about it several times, everything matters. Everything matters. Even when we talk about natural things producing spiritual outcomes, even some of the items that you possess that are connected to I told you we had a dark side and a light side. Those things are doorways to spiritual outcomes that affect you in the natural. Certain items that you possess, they have spiritual attachments. And people say, well, how can a necklace, how can a statue, how can these things how can they be harmless? How can listening to certain music be harmless? How can those things hurt you? Well, they hurt you because there's words are spirits. And we are dimensional, and we don't understand how spiritual things can house in anything that's matter, that's a substance. And if it can house in it, it can affect you if it's in your environment, because it's almost like creating a contract with it. Taking items from people, these are natural influences that create spiritual outcomes, and vice versa. You come into contact and contract with things and people not knowing it every day. When you accept something from somebody, ignorance can be your downfall. When you accept something it could be as simple as a piece of candy. And I'm telling you from experience, you can take something from someone that has an evil intent for you, as simple as a piece of candy, and cause your body to break down because they have done something to something natural they had something natural and they did something spiritual to it, and when you came and when you received it out of ignorance, not knowing, it causes all hell to break loose in your life, because of ignorance. And I can hear some of my church people say, oh, but I'm covered by the blood of Jesus. And not necessarily, because sin opens the door. The words, a curse without a cause won't be productive. But most people had, the curse will come, and I use the words curse because that's what the Bible says. You open up the door to dark activities because you have some type of unrepentant sin in your life. Most of them do, and they just say, oh, God knows my heart. And this y'all do a Bible study on it. This is your quick little Bible study. And this is how sickness, disease, and other things from the dark side or unharmful things can come in, because you think, oh, God knows my heart. Well, the word says the heart is wicked above all things. Nobody can know it but God. And he has to give you a new heart. Unrepentant sin, unrighteousness, if you're a believer, this is just for believers now. This is for believers. Well, it happens to anybody, but I'm talking to believers. If you don't understand this, this will continue to give you access, or give the dark side access to you. So you have to be very mindful of, when I talked about this in my last podcast, you have the light side and you have the dark side. There's no middle. Good or bad, no in between. A or B. That's it. No, nothing else. 1 and 2. That is it. So if you don't understand these things are hurting you. I have people come sit on that sofa, in that chair all the time, and I see what's going on with them. And they're taking all this medication. Now, mind you, we're going to talk about that also, because sometimes, because you are a spirit, you have a soul, and you live in a body. Sometimes in your soul realm, you have damaged your brain so much to now your body is affected, and you need some medication to help your hormones get back in balance. But if you don't do the work on the soul fixture, you're going to always be taking that medication, and you won't be in balance, because it'll help you for a little while and it'll go back. So you have to do the work, and most people don't want to do the work. And you have to do the work, because the natural actions impact spiritual outcomes, and spiritual actions impact natural outcomes. They all work hand in hand. You cannot separate them. And understanding this will be helpful for you as you matriculate through life, so that you don't keep repeating the same cycles because of ignorance. Because of ignorance. Now, next week when we come together, I'm going to dive in a little bit deeper on how to identify where natural and spiritual meet in your life. Because you need to understand, how does it mesh? Where does it meet? What does it look like? So that you can identify these things when they show up in your life.